What's going on, everybody? We're back once again with another edition of Wrestling Republic's daily broadcast. It is Thursday, August 17th, a Throwback Thursday. We are on the road to All In, fresh off another edition of It's Wednesday, and you know what that means, Dynamite. I am riding with my usual Thursday crew. Let me introduce them to you guys. First, I'm going to start with my good friend from Philly, our head of opinions, Anthony Ricciardi. How are you on this fine Thursday, my friend?
Doing all right. It's been a long, complicated week for me, and looking forward to talking about what was Dynamite last night. And last week we covered a debut for all the right reasons, remembered as iconic. Tonight we cover one that is iconic for all the wrong reasons.
Our throwback topic, I think we're all excited about it. And I think it's probably in the title of the video.
There's an image. It's not shocking.
I'm not totally sure. It's not as shocking as it could be, but it might be the Shockmaster. I'm just saying. But up next, we got Shad, my Tuesday night friend from Wrestling Off the Air. I almost botched the name there. I apologize, Shad. I was like,
it's okay.
Wrestling Off the Air, post NXT. We got Shad all the way from the DC area, the DMV. How are you, Shad?
What's good, guys? First and foremost, Anthony wearing the best hat of all time. Fly Eagles fly. Y'all know what it is. I'm excited for today's episode. There's a lot of comedy that happened on Dynamite. The throwback topic is comedy. I'm here for a good laugh, man. Let's get into it.
I love to hear it, and I will say, though, given the hat situation, it does feel a little bit like 2 against 1, other than, I guess 10-point.
Yeah. You won the Super Bowl. Okay, we get it, man. Let's start the show now. All right, Clark.
Hey, Kermit the Frog is still throwing the ball around the yard over there in Kansas City. We'll see you guys in February. But
we're getting Mania, so there's at least that.
I can't wait. I can't wait for both the Super Bowl rematch and the Mania rematch. Let's hope for that, by the way. And that's not even one of the topics. Let's get into the first topic, which is Chris Jericho's big decision. The decision. We saw artwork. We saw theatrics. We saw everything. It was Jericho making the big decision. Anthony, I want to toss it to you out of the gates.
Mm-hmm.
How did you feel about Jericho's big decision?
Okay, the one thing that made zero sense to me was, okay, Don has this painting and it's covered and Jericho sees it. Even if Jericho said, no, Don, I'm not going to partner with you, what would have been the purpose of the painting? Like, I don't really get the logic there of having the beheaded Jericho painting out there. In the grand scheme of things, I do like the, I'm glad that it's not Takeshita that Jericho's facing. Ospreay, I really thought they would have done Ospreay Omega 3 there, since they've done 2. I kind of thought they were going to do a third. I don't know if Jericho is going to be able to keep up with Ospreay. That's my only concern going into it. Can Ospreay carry Jericho, and does Jericho have enough smoke and mirrors to make this not a dud?
Yeah, that's a really, really great point there. It's one of those things where 5 years ago, we're over the moon, right? 4 years ago, maybe even. I still kind of believe in Jericho on this one. I think if he was willing to wrestle Ospreay, like outside of kayfabe backstage, he's got something special in the tank for Wembley, and that he'll be fully prepared to keep up as best he can. And they'll be able to lay out a match that features both strengths. Because I also think that's another scenario, right? if he tries to keep up with the pace as if he could when he was the Lion Tamer, right? When he could keep up with Ospreay's pace, that will be a failure. But I do think there's a way to wrestle this match that features both's ability to be athletic, both's, strengths, as opposed to exposing one or the other's weakness.
Jericho is one of the best of all time, and he knows how to smoke a mirror. And Ospreay is really one of those once in a generation talents. So if they both are able to perform at their peak, it'll be passable. The key is not to go too long with it. The longer it goes, the more dangerous it is.
That could be any of like the three ways you would view a match in in hindsight. I think it could either be a show stealer or like that was really good for pretty good for Jericho Ospreay, right?
Yeah.
Or it's gonna be like, what was
they should have never did this.
Yeah, but I think it could be any of the three. Shad, how do you feel about the booking of the match, but more importantly, the segment from last night's Dynamite?
I enjoyed the segment more so. There wasn't a whole lot I didn't entirely love with this show in totality, but I did like the segment. I love the the science of what goes in the mind of Don Callis. I think last night he shined, and we'll talk about another segment later. But I just love the idea where he was like, man, this guy probably is not going to join us. I got my hitters on the back end, and we're going to get our due diligence to how he reacts. And then he's utterly surprised. He's like, oh, you are going to join us. Because, Jericho kind of pitched in a way like, I usually start factions, but you know what? This time I'm going to join a faction. And caught Don by surprise. He was like, let's not worry about this portrait, and Jericho obviously goes through the process like, no, let's see what it is. And then, it's a play off of the painting portion of it. I thought it was funny. And, we get the beat down with Takeshita and, obviously with Ospreay coming in. In regards to Ospreay and Jericho, it is a style clash. Jericho is definitely, years upon years of what he is. But Jericho is such a vet where I feel like he'll be able to work a pace where it'll be a good enough match. And to me, it's more so indicative towards Will Ospreay. This is like a legacy opponent. Like Chris Jericho, in my opinion, is a guy you can argue being on the Mount Rushmore of the best wrestlers of all time. And you get an opportunity to wrestle him at, your home country on a card of this magnitude. It's a legacy matchup. It's one where I'm hoping that Jericho is like, I'm going to give this guy the moment and I'm going to put him over. And it becomes that. Now, we know Jericho's, I've said it on podcasts before here, feuds end up becoming upon what is more about him, but we're so close to the pay-per-view, and Ospreay is such a megastar, like upon how great of a worker he is, and it being in the UK, I would hope that he puts Ospreay over, but I liked it overall.
No doubt. I will say though, guys, I mean, we watched Jericho all the way up. We've seen him. There was a time where Jericho could keep up every second.
For sure, but he's almost 50 years old now.
He can't anymore. We know that. But I think that's where we had this conversation, about Vince Carter off air, right? It wasn't going between the legs, Dunk. Right? There was no elbow in the rim at 38.
He knows how to work his spots.
Spot up in the corner, still goes in, and Ospreay, I think the groundwork that Jericho laid is what allows Ospreay's style to be so over and so important nowadays. And I think that's why this match is more important than necessarily the way that it was kind of arguably a little sloppily thrown together, right? The importance of Jericho to Ospreay's success is kind of what this is about. It's a little bit, master and pupil, right? In a way.
The one thing I want to point out is, and this was years ago, Ospreay's had Vader's last match. I think
That's
a lot of people forget that. And Vader, I mean, he couldn't move like he used to, but even at that point, the young Ospreay made that match believable. The big man versus small man. Ospreay has improved so much as a performer from that point. That's what gives me some faith that, like, between Jericho's knowledge and Ospreay's ability, this could be decent to at least. I don't think it'll be embarrassing. Let me put it that way. I don't think it'll go that way.
I agree. I think it could be potential show stealer if Jericho really shows up fired up and with that Wembley crowd. I do see a possibility where we see just an elevated performance, kind of one of those things like almost unexpected in a way, as much as like calling it implies that I expect it.
The bar's low, so the expectation you're going to end up overachieving.
There's a chance to overachieve on this in a way that I think could be really exciting. With that though, let's move on to Orange Cassidy versus Wheeler Yuta. Anthony, I'm going to toss it to you right away. What'd you think of the match? Cassidy's run's been fun thus far. Then obviously we'll talk about what it led to at All In as well. Of course, the name brand iconic AEW match. We're waiting for him to put it in the video game. Stadium Stampede. I want to get your thoughts on the whole situation. How do you feel about it?
I think this is one of those angles, if they play it right, I think this could be a heated rivalry for Orange Cassidy. I mean, you're having somebody that used to be a buddy of his that was trained by him. Like, they used to be quote unquote best friends. I think you could run an angle with this, and if you do it right, Yuta could get massive heat by taking the title off of Orange at some point. Like, he's a believable person. You could do it. He is a former pure champion. I think you could do that. It's the Stadium Stampede. I think it's interesting they're throwing it in there, and it makes sense because it is going to be a massive stadium. So it would visually, it should be really good, especially if they do the cameras right and make things work. I'm hoping it's entertaining and not just a complete mess. And the cameras don't miss really important stuff, because especially if you're doing an arena that you're not particularly familiar with, because obviously they've never run it before. There's a chance you may miss a lot of stuff because the camera guy's in the wrong spot at the wrong time, or different camera cuts or whatever. That would be my only real concern for that match.
I hear where you're coming from there. I do think that it just has to be a spot fest for Stadium Stampede, right? Like, it's going to be one big spot over there. You send cameras all around the arena, and you do your best to do like almost a tweener of not fully cinematic, but like half of it is on screen, half of it is in the actual arena, and it happens in that order.
You got to do. So it's got to be the right camera cuts, though.
Strategic camera work.
Yeah.
I think is key. Sean, did you enjoy the segment? Well, afterwards, as far as the booking is concerned, did you enjoy?
I mean,
that we're getting Stadium Stampede.
I'd be a liar if I say I wasn't excited for the Stadium Stampede match, because I absolutely love these chaotic, like, I'm gonna just fight you on all areas of, the arena or stadium for this part. I mean, that Wembley's huge, so I think they have a good opportunity of making it like visually, like, something super crazy. I love all the wrestlers in it. We got BCC, got the Lucha Bros, you got my partner Eddie Kingston in it. So it should be fun. The segment itself, it's just a typical AEW ending segment, just people jumping in and all this, real quick wind of stuff. And then Eddie's just going to announce, or whatever insert wrestler is going to announce, I challenge you to that type of match. Segment itself, it was whatever. It was kind of normal. It wasn't anything to wow me. I could, once you kind of see all these different people entering in, you could be like, all right, they're going to build to some sort of like multi-person match. But the match itself, I'm going to be excited to watch because the match itself is going to be amazing. But the build up to it, it is what it is. It's okay.
I definitely hear where you're coming from there. And with that, let's move right in to the Kenny Omega interview segment with Jim Ross, which I really enjoyed. I thought it was hilarious. I loved the way Kenny leaned into the Uncle Don thing and the childhood stuff, can't pick your family and whatnot, as if they're really family, which cracked me up. And Jim Ross's facial expressions, as usual, talk about a pro's pro. One of my favorite things on this whole show was this interview segment. And then we eventually saw, of course, the attack, which leads to the match that we've booked for All In, a 6-man tag with Kenny and Kota Ibushi, Hangman Adam Page against Jay White, Juice Robinson, and Takeshita. I mean, it's kind of like Bullet Club Light, as I've called them, aka Bullet Club Gold, with the Don Callis family. Why don't we just make it one thing? Call it Bullet Club Don Callis and call it a day. Wash our hands of it. I don't know. That's just my opinion, but I'm going to toss it directly to you, Shad. How did you feel about it? What do you think's going to happen in the 6-man tag match? And what do you think the future of Bullet Club Gold is? Because this doesn't seem very Bullet Club-ish.
Man, how do I say this? I enjoyed the first part of it. I think having Jim Ross in these kind of like backstage segments is like the OG kind of just, him not having to go super up and beyond. And he's Jim Ross is one of the best interviewers, like backstage interviewers and like just in general. And I thought it was cool. I think Kenny did a great job kind of, telling us about the backstory between him and Don Callis and going through all the notions of that. But it's just the comment. I think there's a comment that came in here. These run-ins and these jumpings, like we have them so often, so frequent in one episode. And so obviously I understand the Don Callis and Takeshita portion of it, right? I don't understand why Bullet Club Gold is in it. I don't know if they've had some sort of like animosity or issues with Kenny leading into this feud, but it's something that I mentioned earlier, talking, with the chat. It's why are we forcing multi-men matches and just forcing people upon the pay-per-view just to get names on it? Like it takes legitimacy off of what is being built to the pay-per-view. Like I absolutely love Jay White and I love Juice Robinson as wrestlers, but they have nothing to do with this feud and they're just being put into the match and we're making it, just a multi-match just because Jay White, is maybe from the UK and he's got notoriety out there, but it doesn't align to what the storylines is. And I feel like that's one thing that I have a huge issue with AEW is because we're just wanting to put everybody in there. Like you don't need to do that all the time. You want to put stuff that you want to build feuds, you want to build storylines, and you want to build it to a pay-per-view to this magnitude. It's not just to let everybody get a shine. I know you want everyone to get a shine, but if it doesn't make sense, the viewer is not going to be as, geared to being excited for it and whatnot. Now, the match is going to be great. Don't get me wrong. Bullet Club Gold, them two guys, it's amazing. You also add Hangman Page to it and Ibushi to it and whatnot. It's going to be great, but it's just super forced to me. And the storyline itself, I don't like. I'm probably going to love the match when it happens at the pay-per-view and probably completely forget about this entirely. But that's my grip with AEW booking.
I completely hear you, and we've got some comments here. And one you mentioned from our good buddy numero one Superfly. Do you think there was too many run-ins? It felt like nearly every match, promo, and segment consisted of a run-in. I will totally agree. It felt like not Night of Champions, but Night of Run-ins. That's what I would call it in hindsight. It was what it was. I do think there was some good in the show, but overall, yeah, Night of Run-ins. No doubt. And then we got Sauce King here in the comments as a Jay White truther, I'm excited that he's involved in a match with Kenny for All In. Respect. I mean,
But I would like it if they would have some sort of built-in feud to
I
imagine like All In.
still
Like,
think he's the leader of the Diet Bullet Club. Like, I think Jay White's an extremely impressive talent, but he's the leader of the Diet Bullet Club, essentially. And then one more from Sauce King. I agree, though, there is a ton of 6 and 8 man stuff in AEW lately. I don't necessarily have a problem with that. Directly, I would just say that it's odd that it's on the Wembley card the way that it is. That's where I would kind of draw the line. If it's going to be that many 6 and 8 men or women tags, and you're just trying to get everybody on the card because you sold whatever 90,000 tickets, 80,000 tickets, whatever it is, that's where I would probably draw the line. That's kind of part of the brand, though. Those multi-person matches, they build a lot of stories out of them. They're fun. They're spotty. Yes, they're indie-esque at times, but I don't necessarily mind it as, a challenger brand, as an alternative brand that they are to WWE, doing things a little bit differently in that regard. I wouldn't criticize the booking of multi-person matches as a whole as much as time and place. It bothers me in certain spots, but not all the time. I guess that's where I would go with that. But with that, let's talk about an old timers match, and it is Throwback Thursday, and we got the old guys. I called it yesterday on the show the Battle of the Jeffs. It was Jeff versus Jeff. Maybe if we had the first name Jeff on the line, I might have cared more. But that's not what we got. What we got was, I guess what we got was the Battle of the Jeffs. I know I said that before, but it was just kind of a mess. It was kind of like a retirement home shuffleboard match, but with more blood, And so I'm going to toss it to you, Anthony. Did you get any nostalgia out of the Jeff versus Jeff feature here?
I feel like this is probably the most negative I've ever been on any of the shows, to the point where people are going to think that you and I are on the same wavelength when you complain about Cody or Austin Theory or whatever. Like the level of hate that I'm going to spew on this. I want to say first off, I've always liked Jeff Hardy, and I respected Jeff Jarrett, from back in the day. Jeff Hardy should not be wrestling anymore. Jeff Jarrett, and I've said this before, should not be on weekly wrestling TV in 2023. His whole stable, they shouldn't be on TV. Other than Jay Lethal, that's the only one that's worth anything. And this is a guy that has been a 2-time Ring of Honor World Champion, and combined, he's held the title longer than anybody else, yet he's Jeff Jarrett's sidekick. The same thing with Ethan Page. This guy's got talent, and he's a slapstick sidekick for the Hardys? Like, none of this makes any sense. And, I get it. It was a sponsorship deal. I get it. I don't complain that they made money off of this. Obviously, it went to charity, but regardless, if they were made money off this, again, at the end of the day, it is a business. I know a lot of fans forget that the goal is to make money. You knew going in it was not going to be a good match. Now, I get it. They wanted to go with bigger names, stuff like that. Truth is, Jeff Jarrett was never really a true main event talent. The only time he was in the main event at WCW was towards its end times, and it was because his best buddy Vince Russo was the booker. That's what made him the world champion in WCW. The same thing with TNA. He owned the company. I don't begrudge him for making himself the world champion in the beginning with TNA because they needed an established name. But once they started building up talent, whether AJ Styles, Samoa Joe, whoever you want to name, Kurt Angle, when they brought people in, Jeff should not have been in that position anymore. So when you go into this match, this was a disaster of a match, the match itself. And with to me, it was worse than the Mountain Dew Pitch Black match, because when you look at it, Pitch Black actually made somebody. Granted, it wasn't who WWE wanted it to make. WWE wanted to make Bray Wyatt. Instead, it got LA Knight over. This match got no one over. And the only positive that came out of it was that the reported $100,000 that they got paid for it went to the Maui Food Bank. That's the only positive coming out of this.
It's the biggest positive. And honestly, that's the key here. As much as we're going to criticize the match and everything, Numero and Superfly, our good friend, had a similar comment. Hopefully, yes. Sorry, let me read the comment. This might change in the future, but Jeff versus Jeff is considered, in my opinion, possibly the worst match of 2023. Hopefully the money they gathered can help the situation in Hawaii. Yes, Lahaina has a huge soft spot in my heart, as you guys know. That's what this is about for Maui. And it, as you said, that's the positive. That's the takeaway.
It's definitely worst match of the year.
It is.
Without a doubt. Like, I don't even, like, to Anthony's point, I don't even think it's, you can't even, I thought the Pitch Black match was far better than it.
Oh, it is.
Like,
it's in comparison, yeah.
The whiffed
no
finish.
pun intended, is night and day. Like,
I hear you. I hear you on that. With that though, let's move on to our second to last topic of the evening here. We've got the Guns, Billy Gunn's sons, the sons of Billy Gunn, against the Young Bucks.
The son of a Guns.
And the Young Bucks are baby faces, and we talked about Night of Run-Ins earlier. Our good buddy Numero and Superfly brought it up. We had a babyface team do that, and I am the king of complaining about babyfaces doing heel stuff. And the Bucks do it all the time, but I really do like the Bucks. I'm not Ignacio, and that's not the point at all. I'm going to toss this straight to Shad. How did you like it? What do you think? What is the future of this one? Speaking of Gun Club, Bullet Club, Diet Bullet Club stuff.
Well, look, man, every Tuesday I join the Gun Club fan club all the time, man. Ever since they came out to Many Men by 50 Cent, I've always been a fan of them. But I think the match served its purpose. The Gun Club gets an opportunity to have a pretty solid tag team match versus arguably one of the, in Carter's mind, the greatest tag team of all time, the Young Bucks. You know, just getting in the ring with them and having a good match. I feel like the Gun Club, first and foremost, are so good at positioning in matches like this. Like, you kind of build a little storyline, like who's the better brother tag team, and they're just, you know, they can eat an L like this and it'll be okay. And the match served its purpose, but what we got to was the end of the match, and that's Dax, and you know, that's Cash, and that's them coming in there and making a save to their opponents. And it's what I love, because I feel like within feuds, and we talked about it earlier on Tuesday with Mello and Wesley, it doesn't always have to be the traditional heel versus babyface feud. It can be a feud between two guys or two teams that are relatively either tweeners or babyfaces, because FTR is beloved, the Young Bucks are beloved. Like, it's something that we know that it's just going to make an incredible match. And they came in, you know, as babyfaces to help them out. And then you get that little moment where they're like, oh, are we going to hit that, you know, signature move? But they're like, nah, we're going to see you in a couple weeks. And I thought that was the coolest part about it. I think the match served a good purpose, and it got me excited, even though I was already super excited for the Young Bucks and FTR, because, man, great tag team wrestling.
I totally agree. And with the Bucks and FTR too, I love the way they just did the face-off, because it's really about
who's the best tag
deal.
team.
Yeah,
who's the best tag team, right?
We've talked about how this rivalry is almost like could be endless since FTR has come into AEW, right? They teased us and did a short run, but at the end of the day, tag team wrestling wise, outside of the WWE, right? Let's exclude the WWE for a second. It comes down to the Bucks and it comes down to FTR. That's what it is. Right this second, those are the two best, or at least the two most over as far as engagement is concerned. And this match, to do it in a stadium of that size, as much as I would like a little more storytelling, it's brilliant. I really dig it. Do you agree with that, Anthony?
Yeah, I mean, the only thing that I probably would have thrown in, really, I might have made this a 2 out of 3 falls, to be perfectly honest. To me, that would have added an extra layer to it because we know FTR has a history of great 2 out of 3 falls matches. And if you're really trying to, do a massive match with the greatest tag team of all time, I know it's technically a rubber match, but 2 out of 3 falls would have been a lot of fun, I think.
That would have been really cool. And it does harken back to like the Briscoes rivalry with FTR. That would be a very cool way to do this. Either way, though, I'm just excited to see the match. Before we head into our throwback topic, we got a couple comments. We from Bobby Petito. We got hello guys.
That's my bro. Out. That's my guy on Twitter,
Shout
man.
out. And then we've got it's great to have the bunny back at AEW. That's a great point. Shout out Buffalo, New York. Stand up. I actually weirdly yelled that during Daniel Garcia's entrance at PWG this weekend. I yelled Buffalo stand up. No response in LA. Nobody. It was pretty much silent until he did the dance.
Bunny is great. The bunny is great also. I think she's very underrated as a women's wrestler on their roster.
Absolutely outstanding, and I couldn't agree more. But with that, let's finally get into Throwback Thursday. And Anthony, correct me if I'm wrong here. I believe I'm correct, though. It is the 30-year anniversary of the debut of
this week.
The Shockmaster.
This week, yeah.
The gobbledygooker was one thing, but the Shockmaster was entirely its own. I mean, there's nothing that is funnier than watching somebody. I mean, it's as the story's told, it's a real wall, but it really looks like a guy just falling through wallpaper face first and losing his mask. He's wearing a Stormtrooper mask. It's 1993. It's WCW. There is a host of wrestling legends in the room. It's Fred Ottman behind the mask. It's just an iconic moment, the Shockmaster debut. And, with the introduction of the internet, it has become bigger than it even was then. Anthony, you and I have cracked up over this moment numerous times. I want to hear your memories and thoughts on it. It's one of the funniest wrestling botches of all time. Am I wrong?
It's absolutely iconic for all the wrong reasons. The same way Jericho's debut that we talked about last week is remembered for all the right reasons, is one of the greatest of all time. This one is remembered for all the wrong reasons. And one of the things that I wanted to point out, obviously, this is not necessarily Clark and I's show if sold separately, but I do happen to have the Shockmaster figure where he's falling through the wall. He comes out wearing a bedazzled Stormtrooper helmet, fur vest. Ole Anderson is the person doing the voice. As Dusty tells the story, they did a dress rehearsal. It was fine. When they were redoing the wall, according to Dusty, Crockett said, "Oh, you need to put a board there on the bottom." There was no board when he did the dress rehearsal. So when he went through the wall, he couldn't see because of the helmet, and he ends up falling. The helmet falls off. All the wrestlers are laughing. And the Shockmaster was supposed to be a big deal. Dusty was the head booker. Shockmaster Fred Ottman was Dusty's brother-in-law. He was trying to give him a big push. You can't give a big push to somebody that fell on his face. They eventually would go and change the look of the character. It was a build-up to War Games, which Shockmaster won, which I think a lot of people forget. But when he was in War Games and every time after, he didn't have the Stormtrooper helmet anymore. He literally was just there with a hard hat, and apparently became a construction worker. But it's remembered for all the wrong reasons. But there are people that have had legendary careers, and aren't remembered as fondly as Shockmaster. I feel like the Shockmaster is one of those things that, you make fun of it, but it's still iconic at the same time. And one of the things when we were rewatching it before the show today, the voice sounded so familiar to me, and I don't know what it reminded me of. I knew it was Ole Anderson's voice, and you guys may remember this. His voice reminded me of the Inspector Gadget cartoon, Claw. That's the voice that it reminded me of, and I wonder because this was after the Inspector Gadget cartoon. I wonder if that was possibly an inspiration for the voice or just a random coincidence.
Oh, no doubt. I mean, that is actually hilarious. I mean, the Shockmaster situation as a whole is hilarious. And it's terrible because Ottman was Tugboat and Typhoon
Mm-hmm.
in the WWE. It's not like he doesn't have any other history, but we've got a few comments here. One from, it looks like the owner of AEW. And I'm shocked at the misspelling on contract.
Well, they misspelled collision, so it could be him.
But I do believe
Anthony Rafiq Khan. Send me the contract, man.
Are you?
I'm Bengali. You're half Paki.
Are you all elite?
Give me the graphic, man. Send me the down payment to buy a house. Let's go. I got a wedding I gotta pay for.
A shout out to Anthony here from Lago Figs.
Mm-hmm.
Lago Figs. Shout out Anthony and then numero 1 Superfly. Fun fact, if you listen carefully, you can hear Russell's reaction on the botch. One of which stated, my God, he fell on his.
That would be Davey Boy. Davey Boy's the one
that was Davey Boy Smith there. Yeah, it's just an iconic historical moment. The action figures they got out of it, though, is kind of ironic too, right? Those have been.
You mean the San Diego Comic-Con one?
There you go. Anthony's got it, no doubt. Shad, though, I'm going to toss it to you. Now that you're all elite, what are your memories of the Shockmaster?
Let's get the Shockmaster versus Jeff Jarrett, man. I'm all elite now. I need this. Not all jokes aside. It's one of those. So obviously, this is 30 years ago. I am 31 years old. I did not watch it when I was a year old. It's something I had to, as a wrestling fan, do my history on and do some research. But it just takes you to the time of how it was completely different back then and it is to now. Like I love, like I'm a movie buff, so like old, like bad, like alien movies, like from the 80s and stuff like that. You're able to just see the funniness of just how bad stuff can be, but just everyone's reaction to watching it, just laughing and like just having side remarks, and you can hear it under the breath. And just this big guy, man, this big dude just busting through the wall, tripping with his mask falling, and picking it back up and still having the decency to still try to go through it while it's all unraveling on live television is just hilarious to me. I mean, the bedazzled stormtrooper mask. I mean, we're all, who's not a Star Wars fan? It looks funny, but it makes moments like this are important in pro wrestling because it's just like movies, like bloopers are always funny, but it's just one of those moments that's just hilarious. You can look back and you can laugh at it like we are right now. And I don't know, man. It's great to see and think back. Like you're able to laugh at it. I'm sure that it was probably a tough moment for him at that time, and he probably got a lot of, flack from it and jokes from it from the people in the locker room. But he got a good laugh from it. You probably made a lot of money off of it after that. So
it's one of those things too that's so wild that it's such a ridiculous botch, and you think about the level of talent in the room. You've got British Bulldog, you got Flair and Dusty, you've got the Harlem Heat, so Booker T.
Stevie Richards too.
You've also got Sting. Like what?
Look at.
I mean, it's like a Hall of Fame lineup
Clark,
that just gets struck out.
Clark, literally
One
everyone in that segment, other than Sid, Dustin
When
Rhodes.
Sid Vicious is a former not Hall of Famer, former WWE champion, multiple time, and WrestleMania main eventer.
So Sid, Shockmaster, and Dustin Rhodes are the only people in that segment that are not Hall of Famers. Now, Dustin's going to be a future Hall of Famer.
No, there's got to be one more.
Sid, the Harlem Heat's in there.
Mm-hmm.
Flair's in there.
Is the Harlem Heat in as a team?
Yes.
Yes, they are.
And Booker's as a solo. So, yeah. So
Sting's in.
Flair's in twice.
Wow.
Literally everybody in that segment. And Dustin, who was in the War Games, but I don't know if he was
outside of Ottman.
But Dustin will eventually be in the Hall of Fame for Goldust. That's only a matter of time.
You would think.
Sid's probably eventually going in. So realistically, the only person in that segment that's not currently a Hall of Famer and might not be would be Shockmaster. And Ole's not in because of Ole.
Because he's Ole.
Yeah, he's Ole. So that's otherwise he would have been in with the Horsemen.
Wild to think about. And
that
honestly,
was a Flair interview segment. It was like Flair for the Gold or whatever.
It was his version of the Grayson Waller effect, essentially. Right?
Yeah.
It was his, whatever. What was Jericho's
his talk show?
Yeah, it was his talk show segment.
Mm-hmm.
That's unbelievable. Okay, also, though, by the way, when we've talked about it, do you think it was a real wall? It looked like that thing was like pretty cardboard.
It was it had to be a thin wall.
I don't think he punched that hard to go through that wall because he fell so.
The thing is, if that board wasn't there at the bottom, he wouldn't have fell through. But at the same point, if he would have went through that wall like he was supposed to, that character would not be as fondly remembered as because the botch made it.
The other thing though is if it's like just a wall and he's supposed to truck stick the wall like it's Madden 2014, where you could actually use the truck stick, the helmet's coming off. If he's just going through a wall, that's why I'm like, this thing had to be cardboard and he tripped over a 2x4, right?
That was the only thing solid.
Not to recklessly speculate, but I'm just saying.
That was the only thing solid was the 2x4. Everything else was paper thin for him to get through.
I mean, didn't he say in hindsight that it was a wall? I'm like, there's no way he was going through plaster.
First off, he said in the interview that, he had a bust through. He bust through. He claimed there were 2x4s at the top and he bust through. That's wrestler hype. The truth of the matter was,
we'd have seen snapped wood panels.
The truth is, it was paper thin for him to get through for dramatic effect. You're not going to have him bust through. He's not the Kool-Aid man. I think maybe that was the inspiration. The Kool-Aid guy, maybe.
Kool-Aid man is hilarious.
He should have gone Kool-Aid man. I think that is exactly what it was.
The reason the Kool-Aid man doesn't trip is because there's not a 2x4 at the bottom.
Exactly. The helmet falling off too. So
the helmet and him getting it and putting it back on.
Can we get this guy a chin strap?
Well, and the
so
one thing,
like
the other thing is that he said during that interview that we watched, where he said he bust through it. He goes, I got the helmet back on and then cut the promo. You didn't cut the promo. Ole cut the promo. You just did the hand gestures.
Yeah, he just moved. He waved his head and moved his hands.
Yeah. So I'm like,
it is Ole Anderson talking during the promo.
Now, it didn't ruin his career because once his WCW run ended, like you said, Clark, he went back to WWE and became Typhoon.
Yeah.
So like it didn't end, but I mean, he's had multiple memorable characters. He could sign his Tugboat, he could sign his Typhoon, and he could sign as Shockmaster. And he's as Cody has said, he was Uncle Fred.
Yeah.
When the helmet fell off, Cody's with his
like a Rhodes.
He goes, I think that was Uncle Fred, which is just iconic. The fact that like you look at the careers, and that's like a trivia thing. Like, who's Cody's uncle? Shockmaster.
Typhoon, Tugboat, whatever you want to say. It's Uncle Fred.
Yeah.
Okay, no, but seriously, it's been an awesome show, guys. Awesome Throwback Thursday. As usual, that brings us to the end today. If you haven't already liked and subscribed, please do. It helps us out immensely. If you're over on Spotify, 5 stars helps us out a ton. If you're on Twitch, the follow is huge for us. If you're trying to tune in tomorrow, not the same time, but the same place, we'll be at noon Pacific, 8 in the UK, 3 Eastern, 9 a.m. Hawaii. Shout out Maui. All love, guys. Thank you for having us, and we'll talk to you soon.